I've never made a YouTube video before, but I got inspired by the Snow White drama, and I've had this idea for a while now, so I figured, what the heck? I just wanted to add some positivity to the Snow White conversations, so without further ado, here are a few other versions of Snow White worth watching and worth talking about. First up is VeggieTales' Sweet Pea Beauty. It is a Snow White story, but technically a hybrid with Sleeping Beauty. Seriously, Larry is wearing Prince Philip's exact costume, but it's Snow White enough that I think it still counts. Par for VeggieTales, the moral and message focus on God's definition of beauty with an emphasis on inner beauty and acts of beauty instead of physical beauty. The story is silly, sweet, and fun with an emphasis on vegetable puns. It was made right around the time during that transition between classic VeggieTales and new VeggieTales. So it's not the best looking animation, but nothing obnoxiously bad. This, technically a version of Snow White, is sweet, simple, to the point, happy ending. Though the story isn't exactly Snow White, it's close enough that it still counts. A great movie for kids and all ages. If you want a darker and deeper poison apple to sink your teeth into, I present Snow White, Tale of Terror, starring Sigourney Weaver as the evil queen. Enough said. She steals the show, but everyone else does a great job too. A much darker take on Snow White, it just touches on enough adult themes to warrant the R rating. Again, I emphasize R rating, such as sexual assault, miscarriage, they almost bury her alive, lots of murder, and the relationship between the queen and her brother, the huntsman, broaches on uncomfortable implications. It's not my favorite, but the character development is worth talking about. The queen starts out kind and falls into wickedness after rejection and tragedy, while Lily, our Snow White, starts out spoiled and selfish and must grow into a good person. Not one for the kiddos, again, R rating, but if you're old enough for an R rating and are just craving some of that Grimm Brothers dark classic fairy tale look, I recommend give this one a try. Next we have the short as a dwarf but amazing musical short parody, Snow White and the Seven Thugs by Todrick Hall and his team. Starring Victoria Justice as Snow White along Todrick and some other recognizable faces, this short video is a funny as heck parody with classic Snow White contrasting against the street-smart seven dwarves against the evil Queen of the Hood. There's enough twerking and drug references that I wouldn't recommend it for little kids, but older teens and adults would find it amusing in the clever silliness. The big rewritten song and finale of the video is Whistle While You Twerk, which sets the tone pretty accurately. If magic isn't your thing, but you still have a Snow White story to knock off the bingo card, I recommend Sidney White. Jumping off the success of A Cinderella Story, Sidney White is about a girl who goes to college and put against an evil queen of the school and is forced into overflow student housing with 7 dorks. Fun allusions to the OG story, from the Mirror website that tracks the popularity of the girls at school to the poison apple computer virus that forces Sidney to work all night to the point where she falls asleep. Sweet friendship story between Sidney and the dorks / dwarves. Nice romance with the prince, and the evil queen gets her comeuppance. Teen appropriate, little kids may find it boring, but it is a fun story, so I recommend giving it a watch. I think Hallmark has a few Snow White movies under their belt at this point, but I also think most of them are modern retellings and or Christmas movies. That's not what this list is all about. So for this one, we will talk about Snow White, the fairest of them all. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, that is Lana Lang from Smallville. Now we're gonna move on. I think this one is one of the more creative versions of Snow White I've seen. They really push the magic and the world building. The dwarves control the weather and are named the days of the week, and their color coordination rainbow powers let them teleport. There's a genie who's the one who gives his hideous witch sister her beauty and the opportunity to marry the king. The mirror sequences are really cool. It uses elements from the original Grimm Brothers story and some other stories like the Snow Queen, the glass shards in the eye and heart affecting people's personalities. It can feel a little bogged down by all the magic stuff in some places, but it's still a fun, different version that still has a lot of heart and charm to it. This is another one I would absolutely recommend for kids. Tell me you're trying to cash in on the Disney audience without telling me you're trying to cash in on the Disney audience. Happily Ever After was one of those, wait, that wasn't made by Disney? Princess movies of the 80s and 90s. It's 80s, not Disney animation, and sometimes it really shows, but other scenes will look absolutely gorgeous. There's that old 80s charm to it. A sequel to the standard Grimm story, totally not trying to be a sequel to the Disney version, we swear. In this story, Snow White's prince is kidnapped by an evil wizard. Snow is proactive in the rescue without having to be a obnoxious girl boss. She's the leader of the 7 dwarves with superpowers that are on this quest to rescue the prince. Snow isn't a warrior, but displays great bravery throughout the whole film, and it really works. She's a really fun character in this movie. The twist with the prince and the final battle are amazing, and I dare not spoil them. It's a great movie for kids. You do have to know the story of Snow White first, but I cannot recommend this one enough. Here's an old one that you've probably never heard of. Snow White and the Three Stooges. It really should be renamed Snow White on Ice. Probably 75% of the film is while they're on ice skates, but that does lend itself well to the whole snow thing, and it looks really cool on film. This one is very funny, but only when the Stooges are on screen. The rest of the film can get a little slow and a little quiet, but I think that's deliberate to make the Stooges stand out. Costumes and set have that old movie made out of cardboard and plywood charm. The Stooges act as the dwarves with a little change involving the prince. There's enough of a change to the plot that keeps it interesting without going off the tracks completely. Great singing, fun, simple, great one for kids and the whole family if you want a little bit of a old movie nostalgia time. This one opens the door to an entire library of absolutely amazing fairy tale films. Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater presents Snow White and the 7 Dwarves. If you want mere word-for-word Grimm Brothers adaptation, this is the one for you. An absolute classic, short, simple, to the point. No extra elements, no twists, no dark gritty. This is exactly what it says on the tin. It is just the Snow White story. With a small but stacked cast of only 12 people, including Vincent Price, this version of Snow White is absolutely great for kids, adults, the whole family, if you're in the mood for just Snow White. Sometimes that's all you want, just the story. I can't recommend Fairy Tale Theater enough. It's a fantastic collection that isn't talked about nearly enough. Mirror, Mirror is one of my favorite film versions of the Snow White story. Hitting most of the important story beats, this version does its own thing enough to make it really unique without losing its identity as a Snow White story. The costumes are absolutely stellar. So is the rest of the production. From the sets and effects, everything looks phenomenal. This might be my favorite depiction of the dwarves. Actual actors with dwarfism, each dwarf is unique, not just part of the set of 7. Each one has a different personality, opinions, and style. They don't always agree on the course of action, and they all have their own way of getting the job done. This group act like a band of brothers or military guys forced together and found a family in the camaraderie, even more so after they accept Snow White into the group. The magic in this is super fun and creative, the mirror being a mirror of the queen's evil self that plays off her insecurities while trying to convince her not to go too far is very cool. Julia Roberts is wild in this role, and her outfits are stunning. I love this Snow. She starts sheltered and naive, trapped by the evil queen, until she sees that the queen has made everyone in the kingdom miserable, not just Snow White. So she decides to take action. After running away and joining the dwarves, then she has a training montage and a makeover and proactively decides to fight against the queen's unjust ruling. And I love her bandit outfit. Snow and the Prince are super cute. All the supporting cast is great. Everything about this movie is great. I could gush forever because no one talks about this movie enough. Did I mention the costumes? There's some scary imagery, but it's definitely a great for kids movie. Red Shoes and the 7 Dwarves. If you've never heard of this one, I'm not surprised. Because of a serious misstep in marketing translation, specifically a tagline asking, "What if Snow White wasn't beautiful?" referring to her plus-size self. Needless to say, it didn't do the film any favors when it came to the US and was almost buried because of it. Which is a real shame because the movie is fantastic. Snow White uses the magic apple shoes to change her appearance to hide from the evil queen. The real Snow White is super strong, plus size, while magic transformed Snow is dainty and traditionally curvy. She gets help from the F7, a group of fairy tale princes who have been cursed to be small and green dwarfs whenever somebody else looks at them. The story of Snow White is reimagined and enhanced by elements from a few other fairy tales, including Cinderella, King Arthur, Pinocchio, and more. The moral is really well done. This story tells a great message about self-confidence and beauty standards without being obnoxiously preachy about it. Skinny Snow isn't good or bad for being skinny and pretty, and plus-size Snow isn't good or bad for being large and strong. She's the same person no matter what she looks like. Same with the Prince Merlin character. Tall and handsome or short and green. He's the same guy. That's the point of this story. It's not body positivity, rather a lesson in don't judge by appearances and you shouldn't treat people better or worse because of how they look. Pretty privilege is kind of addressed in this movie, but it's not obnoxiously so. Long story short, great messaging. Really fun story and character, a fantastic choice for kids that isn't talked about nearly enough because of a snafu in marketing translation. If, like me, you miss the old Disney magic and respect for the characters and music styles that built the behemoth that is the Disney Corporation, I present to you Patty Cake Productions. These guys deserve all the praise and more. Their videos are incredible, unbelievable attention to detail in costumes, sets, props. You can feel the love and respect these guys have for the source material. Everyone should watch all of these videos. They have lots more than just Disney stuff, but for the sake of this video, I specifically recommend Snow Spears, despite being a few years older now, a short medley of Britney Spears songs reworked to tell the tale of Snow White. Another really great one is Heartless, a more recent original song highlighting the evolution of the evil queen in media over the years. The songs are so good, the sets and production are on point, and I cannot recommend this channel enough. Other videos that highlight the evil queen in Snow White include The Villain's Lair, an entire series on the evil queen and the other Disney villains plotting revenge against the heroes of their stories, including That's All, Evil Queen tosses shade and verses with Maleficent. Look What You Made Me Brew, the Taylor Swift song reworked to spotlight the live-action versions of the Disney villains singing and scheming. Tough Love, Gothel, Evil Queen, and Wicked Stepmother lament over their ungrateful stepchildren. And Once Upon a Time, original song tribute to the series Once Upon a Time, which we will get to in just a minute. There's so much more. Go check them out. I cannot sing these guys' praises enough. Before Marvel made crossovers almost boring, and during a time when Disney still thought fairy tales were worth taking seriously, we got the absolutely incredible Once Upon a Time. Disney tossed all of their princess IPs and a bunch of other classic fairy tales into a blender, and an epic masterwork of a fantasy show came out. Once Upon a Time creates an entire world, well, technically a bunch of worlds when you throw Oz, Neverland, Wonderland, the Enchanted Forest, and our world into the pile. Snow White's story is at the heart of the series, but the plot travels through so many other tales and stories that it's almost impossible to summarize the entire show. I've always loved the unique twists they put on the characters in this world. It's sort of fairy tale meets epic fantasy, which I think they did such a great job with. It makes the characters feel more real, but still in tune with their fairy tale selves. 7 seasons of magic, drama, deals, love, family, forgiveness, second chances, character strength, character faults, fantasy, adventure, drama, slow burn, surprises, twists, so many twists. Once Upon a Time has a little bit of everything for everybody, if you're into fantasy. Everyone in the cast really shines, but the main cast, Snow, Emma, Prince Charming, and the Evil Queen, absolutely steal the show. All of them do such an amazing job. Everyone in the show does a good job. And because it's a long-form series, they all get a chance to really dig into the characters. I'd recommend this for teenagers at least and up. There's a lot of fantasy-style murder, so I wouldn't recommend it for young kids, but it's still a really fun show. If you want the ultimate fairy tale binge-a-thon, Once Upon a Time is for you. And at last, the perfect alternative to Disney's Snow White. I offer you Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The movie that started it all, the film that no one but Walt himself had any faith in, to the point papers were calling it Disney's folly. No one thought that this would work, but it did, and it made history. It is still one of the highest grossing films in history, counting for inflation. It's lovely, simple retelling with animation that still stands the test of time almost 100 years later. People criticized The Prince as boring, but part of that was limitation of the medium. Walt wanted more interactions between Snow and the Prince, but they straight up didn't know how to animate him. They had to rotoscope the Prince's few scenes. He was the one that was planned to push the witch off the mountain, but they just couldn't manage to do it, so the dwarves did. The Prince and Snow's relationship gets criticized so much nowadays, but I always get annoyed when women get all, she should save herself, and I sit there and steam over, I'm sorry, she's literally a slave to the ruler of the kingdom, trapped in a toxic and abusive relationship. The Prince and Snow meet by chance when Snow wants a prince to help take her away from enslavement by her stepmother, and maybe find the love and family she lost when her father died, which I always thought was part of the reason she liked the dwarves so much. They were the family that she was missing, and they were kind of the first step in her finding it again. True love at first sight is a literary device to move the story along. Why does Hollywood hate and True Love's Kiss so much? I'll never understand. This movie broke every barrier, from technology to culture to musicals to the film industry as a whole. It's still a great movie that stands on its own regardless of the cultural impact. The word here is timeless, a concept that has seriously been lost by the modern Disney Corporation. The quality of the product speaks for itself, spanning generations of love and respect. It wasn't made for modern audiences of the time. That time was 1920s. If it was, no one would still be talking about it. It was made for anyone, anywhere, anytime. This wonderful, beautiful movie could not be recommended enough, and you should absolutely go watch it with your entire family. Or alone. Just go watch it. Snow White is a classic story for a reason. A timeless and simple tale, like most of the Grimm brothers stories. And I think let's get the conversation back onto, let's ignore that bad version and look at some good ones. Did I forget your favorite version? Drop it in the comments. Anyway, that's all I've got, so I'll be off. Have a great day, and remember, God made you special and he loves you very much. Bye!